the marketing manager at AZERO, and today I will be your host. And we have one of the first pilot projects in the ecosystem funding program, the AZERO domains, which turned today into AZERO.ID. The graphic that had this cryptic logo made some noise in AZERO Twitter, if we can call it like that. But yeah, we're already here, so news is out, so we can discuss what the rebrand is all about, what the domain system means for a blockchain ecosystem, and more. So stay tuned, and if you have any questions, you can of course ask them as we wrap this up. And yeah, today we have Mike and Dennis from AZERO.ID. So welcome, guys, and yeah, we just want to learn more about what does the rebranding mean, and is it more of a statement than just a rebranding?
Yeah, hi guys. Thank you, Matt. Thanks for the welcoming. Pleasure to be here. Also, pleasure to be talking in front of the whole AZERO community. It's really awesome that you guys are all joining. And yeah, maybe I will just give a short intro to myself. So I'm Mike, co-founder of AZERO.ID, so former AZERO Domains. I'm also joined by Dennis, my co-founder. He's also here as a speaker.
Yeah, excited to be here. Excited about the launch today. Glad you set this up, and yeah, looking forward to what to come with AZERO.ID.
Yeah, glad to have you. Yeah, so what does it mean, if you could guide us through all that happens today for AZERO.ID?
So, I mean, we have started building AZERO domains back in September 22 when we actually won the hackathon, the IFWASO hackathon. And I think although we had some communications via Discord, via Twitter all the time, we have somehow been building in stealth mode in private. So we never updated our branding. We never actually gave an overview about what we are actually building, what's it all about. And we initially started with the idea to build a domain service for LF0. And over the last months, this idea and this vision has really shaped further, and like a really like broader vision about what this product and this project is going to be. And the switch from domains to ID, AZERO.ID, is the very best description of this change in our vision. And I'm really happy to present you some more of the details, which this kind of change is all about and is including in terms of how our product will look like and what we will be able to offer in the future.
Yeah, please do. You can go deeper into, what did you announce today, and what does it mean for AZERO.ID?
Yeah, sorry guys, I think I always can't hear Matt, so I've never heard the questions. So let me just continue explaining what AZERO.ID is all about. Probably this was the next question from Matt. So basically, we are trying to be the very core primitive of a user's on-chain identity in the LF0, but also the overall substrate ecosystem. And this means that we see the actual domain, so an on-chain NFT domain, which you might already know from VENS, for example, on Ethereum. We see this as the starting point, the core primitive, and then we see this as something which can be enriched with a lot of different identity features, identity verticals, if used by the users on the blockchain. This could, for example, mean that you can just add any kind of verifiable credential, any kind of decentralized identifier. So both things are terms in the identity field describing certain information which you can attach to something else. And in our case, you can attach those information to the domain, store it on-chain with the NFT smart contract of a domain, and then make use of this kind of aggregated identity when exploring the ecosystem, for example. So this might mean that another dApp can just query all this information and then make use of it in their very own use case. This is something we think is super interesting and important. And also, we are really looking into enabling things like that in a privacy enhanced manner. So this could mean that we make use of zero knowledge proofs to, for example, prove in an anonymous way that a certain information is attached to a domain, and that other, for example, applications can then also make use of this information. And overall, we believe that especially on-chain domains in kind of like this field of the larger identity vertical on chain will be one of the super apps of the next blockchain cycle. So in general, these kind of domains, the Azero domains we are offering with AZERO.ID will replace usernames, bank accounts, probably your email addresses with on-chain messaging, and aggregate, as I said, all the different identity information. And this will like actually make AZERO.ID to become somehow the core primitive or one of the core primitives of the on-chain identity from everyone who is using the LF0 blockchain, but also other blockchains which are using the substrate tech. But this is also something I will like extend further in our AMA.
Cool. All right. So, what's next? How far are you from releasing the end product, going through the test nets to the mainnet? What's the plan, and when can users expect to scope their domains?
So interestingly, we have already given the testnet date today in our announcement. So in around 1 month, we will start the testnet of AZERO.ID. This has been in development for the last month. So we're currently getting an audit by Kudelski Security. We are already halfway through, and it looks pretty good as of now. So we don't expect any like further delays when launching our testnet. And this testnet is a bit special because it won't be a public testnet or a fully public testnet. It will rather be a private or, let's say, Discord role gated testnet. And if you really want to participate in the testnet before joining us on the mainnet, you can still do so by becoming an OG in our Discord. And we also gave all the information of how to become an OG in our announcement today. And it's actually not that hard. So everyone who really wants to also test what we have been building over the last months will be able to do so. And maybe even more interesting, if you test it and if you provide some valuable feedback for us, we will also grant you a whitelist spot for the very first, we call it early access phase of a mainnet. And what this means is that 1 week before we open up the mainnet for the general public, anyone who has a whitelist spot will be able to register or to buy and register one 5+ character domain on the mainnet. And I mean, the motivation behind this process is basically that we want to give the early community, the LF0 community especially, a chance, or anyone who is actively participating, a chance to secure their very own and unique domain so that anyone can actually use or get the brand he or her has been building up over the last months in the ecosystem secured as a domain during this phase. And then after 1 week, probably sometime in the beginning of July, everyone else will be able to register domains on the mainnet platform of AZERO.ID.
All right. So then what's next? Like, I have the domain. What can I do with it? And isn't it better from like pseudonymity or privacy standpoint? I bet you touched upon that you would have the privacy features.
Yeah, so
but
the main utility of a domain, well, a lot of different things. So first of all, people usually use domains instead of the somehow super complicated alphanumerical wallet addresses. So currently, if you send, let's say, assets to someone else, you will have to get their wallet address. Then you paste it somewhere in your wallet, and then you will like double check or even like triple check if it's the actual correct wallet address you're using to send the transfers, the funds. And this is a procedure which is not really secure, where a lot of like different phishing attacks, which has been established about the last months and years, to actually like use this as an attack vector, because it's just so hard for people to make sure then to make sure if an address is the actual address you want to use. And with domains, it's way easier. If you know the domain of someone you want to send assets to, you just type it into the like address field of a wallet, and then you're good to go. You can just send the funds to this kind of domain. And this is way easier and improves the user experience, especially for beginners in this ecosystem. And we are also thinking of having some campaigns that actually make sure that especially the beginners who just joined the ecosystem will somehow get a domain and can make use of a domain so that they don't even have to go through all this hassle of like making mistakes by like comparing what addresses to make and getting maybe attacked by some phishing site or some phishing attacks. And this is probably the core utility, or let's say the utility people will use it on a daily basis. But then there's this whole identity field, which I was explaining further in the beginning. So you can really attach any kind of identity information, be it something on-chain related from like your wallet transactions, from your NFTs you're holding, from your, let's say, on-chain in-game assets you have been rewarded by playing some games, stuff like that, your on-chain leaderboards. So you can really attach any information to the domain, and then you can signal this to other users, to other applications. They can just make use of it, for example, for conditional airdrops and stuff like that. So this whole identity field is adding a lot of utility to our on-chain domains. And I think maybe I will also explain this probably later in a bit more detail, but I want to already say that using LF0 as a core blockchain we are building on for now will make us able to actually deliver privacy-enabled domains. And this means that you can actually do all the things I've just explained in a privacy-preserving manner. So just imagine you can send something to someone just by using his domain, and still no one can actually see what kind of wallet is attached to this domain or is like resolved by this domain. And this enabled so many different new use cases, also like data sensitive use cases needed by organizations, which we all want to onboard to the blockchain and bring them on chain. So that's why we believe this is really one of the super apps of the next cycle.
Great. And as far as the tech goes, maybe that's more to Dennis, but if you want to use it in like any app that's built on AZERO, is it going to work like out of the box? I guess not. So will you be integrating with other apps in the ecosystem to create that super app you mentioned?
Yeah, maybe I'm taking this one. Yeah, that's correct. Like you basically need to integrate AZERO.ID in other apps like by hand, but it's pretty simple. We built a set of libraries for that, and they're already almost done, or basically done and already open sourced and linked on our page. And basically, if you're writing a React app, for example, it's a one-liner to integrate with AZERO.ID, and it shows automatically your domain instead of your wallet address. And you can resolve both ways, like from domain to address and address to domain. And on top of that, we already secured a lot of launching partnerships and make sure that already when we are going live, we have a set of dApps in the LF0 ecosystem supporting us from day one.
Great. And can you tell me more about how does it actually work? Because, linearly thinking, there's one domain and one wallet address I'd stay behind it, but you said you would combine many addresses, services, and also not only through AZERO, but also through different blockchains. So how's that gonna work with AZERO.ID?
So we are starting with LF0 and only deploying there. Like our vision is to deploy on more blockchains and maybe with a different namespace, maybe with the same connected to XCM. That's still up for research a bit. But also from day one, you can basically, as I said, register multiple domains, and then we have an interface on our end, and you can select your so-called primary domain, which is then your address resolved to. And but you can also have multiple domains resolving to your address. So your primary domain can be imagined as your main on-chain identity whatsoever. which your address will be resolving to. But on the other hand, you can have multiple domains or even subdomains pointing to your address and directing or forwarding assets to your wallet if you are like typing Dennis.A0 or whatsoever in a wallet input field.
Great. And so going beyond that, would you say that the AZERO.ID would be an example of an app that will be maybe the next big trend in crypto? Will we see more of those domains? Are you seeing more activity around it right now? Can you give us a broader scope of the product that you're building in the whole crypto?
Yes, so actually we really believe in that like identity, this whole field of on-chain identity is becoming the next big thing. And especially if you really like combine this with privacy preserving technologies, such for example, Liminal on LF0. But we have also seen and discovered a lot of interesting projects offering, for example, zero knowledge KYC solutions, which can make some kind of like DeFi applications and other applications somehow regulatory compliant without sacrificing all the benefits of having blockchain technology. And we are trying to really go into this direction also with AZERO.ID on LF0. And then there's another really big vertical of our vision, which is just going beyond what we have already described. And this means building the actual domain and identity layer for the overall substrate ecosystem. So for anyone who is not aware of, but LF0 is using the substrate technology. And this technology is built by Parity, so the core development company behind Polkadot and Kusama. And we are already like started researching a broad solution which will use the XCM technology from Parity to actually enable our domains on any substrate chain possible. And this means any parachain on Polkadot, any parachain on Kusama, but also other standalone substrate chains, which have already launched or might launch in the future. So what this actually means is that you will be able, with one single domain, to send transfers to any chain which is connected by this XCM technology based on the overall substrate tech. And this is something which can create incredible user experiences, especially in different verticals which are being built in this ecosystem. And yeah, we're really looking forward to enable this vision because this is something which hasn't been like possible to be built on any kind of like tech stack or in any other ecosystem. And yeah, we are really excited about this like possibility to actually go for this direction and to create such really like groundbreaking products. And that's where we really believe that also this whole field of identity is really one of the next big things in crypto.
Yeah, then that sounds great. And actually, you also mentioned in your announcements that you've concluded the pre-seed round. So I guess you can really think bigger about the project right now, right? Beyond, of course, the EFP grant that you've received earlier in the stage. So what's the plan for, going to the market and, how big do you want it to become actually?
So to be honest, I think there's no, let's say, upper target in terms of how big a project can become. I mean, we are really bullish on LF0 and also on the overall substrate ecosystem. And I think from the very beginning, like starting at the hackathon, from going via the EFP program to getting our first like grant funding to be able to establish a sustainable structure to actually like build this project, to hire the first people, and now like concluding this kind of pre-seed funding with incredible angels also from like Parity, from Web3 Foundation, from LF0 itself, but also from our broader like crypto ecosystem, and also some really, really supportive pre-seed funds and supporters of the LF0 ecosystem who are also already supporting by being investors into LF0 itself. We think we have actually the best setup to expand this like further for the future. And I mean, the goal is to become the main like core primitive and the main domain solution for the overall substrate ecosystem. And we're super bullish on this technology. So we believe that having LF0, the privacy of LF0, but also the overall .zama ecosystem, and just Substrate as a technology which will, as we believe, be used by many more ecosystems and chains in the future. But this will become one of the core players in the overall crypto ecosystem. And then, of course, our goal is to be part of this and to provide the domain and identity layer. So this is really like a large scope, and we are really in for the long term and believe that with the current setup, current support we get, and also our vision, that we can create something long lasting and something big. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet so. And I think a really important piece of it might be the private domain to domain transfer system, because I believe this is the first ever created. So could you expand maybe on that a little bit as well, on how would you like it to operate? What should be the user experience? Have you already thought about it, or are you more like in the research phase on that, and that comes later in the process?
Yes. So, I mean, I think, or we think that this is really one of, or it's the core USP, what we will be able to deliver on LF0. And maybe to just give a better image of what this is all about. So imagine you have a domain on Ethereum, an ENS domain, and you're just like putting a lot of effort in creating your brand, and then you have your own brand as a domain. So for example, it's just a silly example, but Amazon.eth, right? And then you want to make use of this domain. But you also know, anyone knows that that's you, and anyone can see what you're actually doing on chain. So because this domain is resolving to an address, and you initially you want to make use of this domain, but there's always this like address attached, and anyone can see it. Anyone can see the incoming transactions, the outgoing transactions, and any other interaction with a blockchain, basically with any kind of application you interact. And we have seen and also heard and talked to a lot of people that the current UX is that you have this kind of public facing domain, but then you have, for example, 10 other undocs domains, and you always have to make sure that you never leave any like traces between your undocs domains, which you use for all the other stuff you're doing on chain, which you don't want to be publicly available, and you don't want to dox this activity to the overall public or associated with your like brand and your public facing domain. So this like just leads to a lot of hassle, and it's really hard to like scale this user experience also to a lot of like mainstream users who might be interested in blockchain, who might be interested in domains and making use of this technology for their own like use cases, purposes, especially in the creator community. But then they just have this kind of shortcomings because there's just no privacy. And if you are able to obfuscate the connection between the domain and the wallet, and then also have a privacy layer which makes sure that no one can actually like see different transactions and the accounts which are associated with those transactions on chain, then you can create a really great user experience which really scales to the masses. Because I mean, it's just what we are used to from Web2. I mean, if I'm sending some fiat funds to a friend, no one actually knows. Maybe the bank knows, right? But that's all. And we really want to establish this kind of user experience also on the blockchain. We really believe that this is also one of the like pieces of a puzzle which will create or will bring blockchain forward and really fuel the mainstream adoption, because this is clearly missing currently. And I mean, I want to emphasize again that this is powered by Liminal. So LF0's native privacy tech. And Liminal is not yet live on the mainnet, of course. So, I mean, whereas the Shielder is already live on testnet. So we have tried it out, and we have a lot of like architectural designs in our head and also writing some things down. But it will still take some time until we are able to offer this kind of service on the mainnet. So it's also part of the vision. And maybe also to add on this in terms of our mainnet launch. So for the mainnet launch, which will come beginning of July or maybe even end of June, let's see, we will offer a traditional name service with a really high quality in terms of the user experience. You will be able to add a lot of like metadata and information to your domain. You will have your personal website attached to your domain. So like shortly after also issue subdomains, and maybe also interesting for the traders here in the space. We're also working on our native on-chain domain marketplace, which will create a super nice like user experience for trading domains, because this is also one of the bigger use cases on other chains we have observed. So for example, on Ethereum, there's ENS Vision giving a really great user experience in trading domains. And yeah, this is also part of our product, of the overall product suite, which we envision for the AZERO.ID platform and ecosystem.
And talking about the use cases, I'm sure you've already thought about where could it lead the use cases themselves. So I know you've kind of said on your website that it could be even used to manage like companies that issue the domains and use subdomains to manage employees, for example. So do you have some of other use cases for that that you have already came up with? So you can inspire someone to build it actually.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a lot of different super interesting use cases. Maybe there's one use case I personally think is super interesting, and this is like using the domains for on-chain gaming. So imagine there's like some kind of game where people need, for example, a certain identity system which is on-chain, which can also store certain information about in-game assets or stuff like that. And then imagine you can just use our domains and implement this directly into the domains, and then you can also use or carry this information also to other applications. So just imagine it's an interesting example, but imagine there's someone who's building a project associated to the game, and he's doing some kind of sale or some kind of airdrop, and he needs the information that this certain account who wants to purchase the tokens or wants to be participating in the airdrop is an actual player of this game and has certain in-game assets or certain just meets certain conditions. And then you can just use this or like create this kind of identity infrastructure which connects all the dots and then enables such use cases. And and I think also because Amit was mentioning the organizational use case. I mean, once you have this privacy enabled on domains, you really can create, let's say, on-chain payroll use cases. And for example, organizations which deliver or pay out grants to people. But I mean, of course, this is already possible now, but without privacy. And once you have privacy, you can really make all this kind of payment flows, which are around and used in so many different use cases, you can really enable them, because a lot of these things are still not on chain because you just don't have the privacy. And we believe that this will be one of the really like triggers to actually pull these organizations on chain. And so also maybe an interesting detail is that we're trying to become a DAO at some point in time. And we want to actually make use of also everything which the value which is secured to AZERO.ID, and fund other teams and support them to actually increase the reach of the ecosystem, create new use cases, create new applications, making use of the technology, so that this is really becoming one of the, let's say, key infrastructure parts of all the applications being built on LF0 and the overall substrate ecosystem.
And of course, we are still building Liminal, and part of your features will revolve around that. But looking shorter term, what will you be releasing in that month's time? So what will be the functionalities that will be live in July?
Yeah, so I mean, the next bigger thing will be, of course, the release of the testnet, which everyone who has this kind of OG role in our Discord will be able to use and participate in. And then shortly after, because we don't expect any kind of like critical findings during the testnet phase, of course, always something can happen, right? But shortly after, the first version of AZERO.ID will be released on the mainnet. And we're really looking forward to it. And then this is, as I already said, just the starting point, the beginning of the overall journey. So shortly after, we will also push the next features and the next functionalities to the platform. This includes, for example, subdomains. So anything or any use case related to subdomains will become interesting by then. Also, our native trading marketplace or domain trading marketplace will come. later this year. Then, depending on Liminal, the privacy text. So yeah, there's a lot to come. And for the short term, as I said, will be the testnet deployment, and then shortly after the mainnet, the first version of the mainnet.
Cool. So yeah, I think we can get closer to the community questions. So before we go into that, would you, Mike or Dennis, like to add anything we haven't touched upon?
Yes. So I first of all, I really thank everyone who's just listening in, and I hope you like what we are building, what we are going to do. We hope that this will deliver a lot of value to the ecosystem, and make sure that you follow our socials and maybe also subscribe to our email list on the website, the newly launched website, because we will share a lot of interesting news, announcements, partnerships, and more details about the actual product, like ranging from the pricing, which we were using, will be also different to what you are used to on ENS, for example, and other details about our vision and what we are currently up to. So make sure that you stay up to date.
Great. All right. So I think we can already ask our listeners to jump in. So if you have any other questions to the team behind the AZERO.ID, now the best time to do it. So yeah, just raise your hands if you want to ask something. Hello, can you hear us? And can you speak?
Yeah,
Hey.
do you hear me now?
Yeah, works well.
So what's your take on AML? So what are your considerations about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, interestingly, AML, so anti-money laundering, and also KYC, all that stuff will come to blockchain sooner or later. And identity and identity products, which are also on chain and maybe even make use of privacy, are somehow the enabler of finding a solution which can enable these things, which are somehow required by regulations in a lot of jurisdictions, and bring them in a way to a blockchain that you don't sacrifice too much in terms of the current advantages of using blockchain, right? So it's about keeping information private, but still somehow making sure that you are still acting within the laws of a certain jurisdiction, right? Because this is actually the thing which will enable mainstream adoption, right? So we all want the big companies, the big like corporations, but also the mainstream masses, the users, retail users, to use blockchain, because this is all about, right, making blockchain the backbone of the overall, not maybe not society, but at least like economy. And therefore AML plays an important role. And we're really looking into different like solutions where our AZERO.ID could also become part of the solution. So I mean, this will be something, or will be an effort which you have to work on together with like DeFi projects, also maybe with AZERO team, and how Liminal will be structured with like KYC providers such as GateNox, who will join or is already joining the ecosystem and will launch also in the future. So yeah, I think there are a lot of different approaches you can take here. But overall, AML is somehow important when it comes to like privacy preserving technology and having something like a shielder as on LF0. And we're definitely looking into being part of a solution which can bring this technology, let's say, to mainstream adoption. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Is there anyone else? Yeah. All right. So I think we can wrap it up. And thank you again for joining. Thank you for listening. And I guess, see you around.
Great. Thanks for having us. Thanks for your ongoing support. And yeah, that's just the beginning.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks a lot, guys. It was really great being here. Thanks.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.